The making of a dictator, Gaddafi's early life and rise to power. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 near the coastal town of Sirte, Libya. His humble beginnings as a Bedouin shepherd stood in stark contrast to the lavish lifestyle he would later adopt. Gaddafi's early life was shaped by the poverty and lack of opportunity that pervaded Libya under King Idris's rule. This fueled his ambition and sowed the seeds of revolution. In 1969, at the age of 27, Gaddafi led a bloodless military coup that toppled the monarchy. He proclaimed the Libyan Arab Republic, promising prosperity and unity for his people. Charismatic and ruthless, Gaddafi quickly consolidated his power, purging opponents and establishing a one-party state. He presented himself as a revolutionary leader, championing Arab nationalism and challenging Western imperialism. Gaddafi's early years in power witnessed significant social and economic reforms. He nationalized oil production, using the revenue to fund education, healthcare, and infrastructure projects. These initiatives, while often mismanaged, significantly improved the living standards of many Libyans, earning Gaddafi initial popularity. However, this period of progress was overshadowed by Gaddafi's increasing authoritarianism. He introduced his own political philosophy, the Third Universal Theory, outlined in his infamous Green Book. This bizarre blend of socialism, Islam and Pan-Arabism became the cornerstone of Libyan society, dictating every aspect of life. Gaddafi's regime, while initially promising a brighter future, was laying the groundwork for decades of oppression and brutality. The Iron Fist, Gaddafi's rule and the seeds of discontent. As Gaddafi's grip on power tightened, dissent was ruthlessly crushed. His regime became synonymous with human rights abuses, silencing any opposition. Gaddafi's revolutionary committees, initially tasked with promoting popular participation, evolved into instruments of fear and control. Arbitrary arrests, torture and disappearances became commonplace, instilling a climate of terror. The media was heavily censored, and freedom of speech was non-existent. Gaddafi's paranoia grew, and he increasingly relied on a cult of personality to maintain his authority. Despite the repression, resentment simmered beneath the surface. Gaddafi's economic policies, while initially successful, were unsustainable. Corruption was rampant, and the oil wealth, meant to benefit all Libyans, flowed into the pockets of Gaddafi's family and cronies. Unemployment soared, particularly amongst the youth, who saw little hope for the future. The gap between Gaddafi's promises and the reality of Libyan life widened, fueling the flames of discontent. By the turn of the century, Gaddafi's regime, once hailed as a beacon of revolution, had become a byword for tyranny and corruption. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation. The Arab Spring ignites uprising and the Libyan civil war. The year 2011 witnessed a wave of popular uprisings across the Arab world, demanding democracy and an end to decades of authoritarian rule. This revolutionary tide, dubbed the Arab Spring, soon reached Libya's shores. Inspired by the successful revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, Libyans took to the streets in February 2011, demanding an end to Gaddafi's 42-year reign. The protests, initially small and localized, quickly gained momentum, spreading from Benghazi to other cities. Gaddafi, caught off guard, responded with brutal force. Security forces opened fire on unarmed demonstrators, killing dozens and igniting a full-blown uprising. The world watched in horror as images of the Libyan government's brutality were broadcast around the globe. The violence backfired, turning peaceful protests into armed rebellion. Defectors from the Libyan army joined the opposition, forming the National Transitional Council, or NTC. The NTC, based in Benghazi, declared itself the legitimate government of Libya and called for Gaddafi's removal. The country descended into civil war, with the NTC's ragtag forces battling Gaddafi's better equipped but increasingly demoralized army. The conflict quickly reached a stalemate, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The international community, appalled by the escalating violence and Gaddafi's blatant disregard for human life, was compelled to act. Enter the Western powers' NATO intervention and the escalation of conflict. The Libyan civil war presented a dilemma for the international community. The violence and human rights abuses perpetrated by Gaddafi's regime were undeniable. Yet, intervention in a sovereign nation's internal affairs carried its own risks and complexities. The United Nations Security Council, after much debate, passed Resolution 1973, authorizing all necessary measures to protect Libyan civilians. This paved the way for a NATO-led military intervention in Libya. Operation Unified Protector, as the intervention was codenamed, aimed to enforce a no-fly zone over Libya, preventing Gaddafi's air forces from attacking civilians in rebel-held areas. NATO forces, predominantly from France, the United Kingdom and the United States, launched airstrikes against Libyan government targets. The intervention shifted the balance of power in favor of the rebels. Gaddafi's forces, deprived of air superiority, were steadily pushed back. However, the NATO campaign was not without controversy. Critics argued that it overstepped the mandate of protecting civilians and amounted to regime change by proxy. Despite these criticisms, the intervention undoubtedly played a key role in weakening Gaddafi's grip on power. By August 2011, rebel forces, aided by NATO airstrikes, had captured the Libyan capital, Tripoli, dealing a fatal blow to Gaddafi's regime. Section 5. The fall of Tripoli and Gaddafi's flight to Sirte. The fall of Tripoli in August 2011 marked a turning point in the Libyan civil war. Rebel forces, met with jubilant crowds, stormed Gaddafi's compound, Bab al-Azizia, seizing control of the capital. The once mighty dictator had vanished, his whereabouts unknown. Gaddafi, in a defiant audio message broadcast from hiding, vowed to fight on, urging his supporters to resist the rat infestation of rebels. However, his regime was crumbling, with key loyalists defecting or surrendering. Unbeknownst to the world, Gaddafi, along with a convoy of loyalists, had fled his Tripoli stronghold, heading southeast towards his hometown of Sirte. Sirte, Gaddafi's birthplace, held significant symbolic value. He had poured resources into developing the city, transforming it into a modern metropolis and a bastion of support for his regime. Gaddafi's plan remained unclear. Was he seeking to regroup and launch a counter-offensive leveraging Sirte's strategic location, or was he simply seeking refuge, hoping to escape the country or negotiate a deal with the rebels? What was certain was that Gaddafi, despite his dwindling options, remained a threat capable of reigniting the conflict. The rebels, emboldened by their victory in Tripoli, turned their attention towards Sirte, determined to capture or kill the fugitive dictator. Section 6. The final stand. The siege of Sirte. Sirte, now Gaddafi's last stand, became a focal point of the Libyan conflict. Rebel forces, drawn from across the country, converged on the coastal city, determined to root out Gaddafi and his remaining loyalists. The siege of Sirte, lasting from September to October 2011, proved to be a brutal and bloody affair. Gaddafi loyalists, entrenched in urban areas, put up fierce resistance using snipers, rockets and artillery to repel the advancing rebels. The rebels, lacking heavy weaponry and experience, suffered heavy casualties. Civilians, trapped in the crossfire, endured unimaginable suffering, with food, water and medical supplies dwindling. International pressure mounted for a swift end to the siege and for the protection of civilians. NATO airstrikes continued, targeting Gaddafi loyalist positions and hindering their ability to resupply or reinforce. Despite these setbacks, Gaddafi remained defiant, issuing audio messages urging his supporters to fight on and promising victory. As the siege dragged on, conditions within Sirte deteriorated rapidly. Electricity and water supplies were cut off, and food shortages became widespread. Hospitals, overwhelmed with casualties, struggled to cope with the influx of wounded. The city, once a symbol of Gaddafi's ambition, was now a scene of devastation and despair. The stage was set for a final desperate showdown.